Good. Good. There has been a new Star Wars film released. And I can sense the anger of the fanboys. I shall now review it. For a vlog is a type of review many consider to be unnatural.
Spoilers there are ahead.
I'm not as adorable as Baby Yoda, but yes, there are going to be spoilers coming up, so be forewarned. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, Brian Heinz, and this time we're doing another vlog review. I know it's been a hot minute since our last vlog. I've kind of let them slide, but we're going to get back into it. And if you've been following me on my normal channel, you know I've had some computer issues the last couple of months, so I'm trying to get back up to a normal reviewing pace with these, getting more than one video out a month, so bear with me. And please, take a minute, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and please follow me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/LastAngryGeek, all one word. So this vlog is for Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. I've seen it, I liked it, not as much as Last Jedi. If I'm going to rate the sequels, it's going to be Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi. There you go. There was little to no character development in this movie for any of the characters besides Kylo and Rey. They're the only ones who went on any kind of journey and growth in this movie. There was a ton of character development for the whole cast in Last Jedi, but here it's mostly Rey and Kylo's story to the end. The Emperor being alive is the kind of major plot point. First off, why would he broadcast his intentions to the universe? He's always been a behind-the-scenes shadow player. Yes, he was ruling the galaxy, but he manipulated everyone for decades before that, before he took power. Why would he just announce to everyone he's back instead of just springing the trap? There's kind of like a lot of illogical moves set up in the first couple of minutes that don't make much sense, that then they just kind of, okay, that's out of the way, let's get on to the story now. So you're just going to kind of have to deal with a bunch of stupid things happening right away and then get into the story proper. The action was fast and fun, but I went to see this with some friends. One of them said this was a 2.5-hour movie that desperately needed another half hour. There's a lot of things that just kind of happen right away. That first half hour is very hectic. And I kind of agree with him to a point. I think part of that was the lack of Carrie Fisher being able to film anything new for this. We'll get to Carrie in a bit. But let's dive into the cast. We're going to start with Rey, played by Daisy Ridley. Daisy did some of her best acting in the trilogy in this film. Obviously, this was kind of the payoff for a lot of things. Okay, the one thing I knew going into this is that we were going to find out who Rey's parents were and that they were someone important. And I would have been okay with The Last Jedi revelation that they were no one. That made sense to me, that the Force kind of created her like an antibody to the Sith disease, but they didn't want to go that way. It's not rewriting Last Jedi, it's just expanding upon what they learned in that one. I did buy her pain upon kind of realizing that she was the descendant of the worst villain in the Star Wars universe, running away, burning her ship, just being all done with it. I'm just going to hide out here where he can't find me for the rest of my life. And the other thing I'm glad they explored and that I really believed when Daisy was acting was the relationship with Ben, where she admits she had feelings for him. You know, I would have taken Kylo Ren's hand, but I would have taken Ben Solo's. That opening of her vulnerability to her archenemy. Then the reunion at the end, where they're just both kind of smile at each other. It's a sweet moment, and then people die. Daisy had some good moments here and there, but there were also plenty of times where I thought they should have been doing more with her character. She's never quite a leader in this story. It's kind of like the boys leading everything, and she's just kind of adapting on the fly to whatever's coming at them. They say she's her best warrior. I would have liked to have seen her fighting a little more. She's off training the whole time. She never actually gets to do a combat fight until, like, whenever Kylo Ren shows up, then the lightsaber comes out. The whole moment where she's fighting Kylo for the shuttle in the desert, she actually taps into the Sith light and was kind of like, what? That was before we learned she was Palpatine's granddaughter, so that was like, well, did she just use a Sith power because she's related to a Sith, or was she just tapping into the dark side? What happened there? That was kind of a big, shocking moment when that happened. And the very ending of the film with her could have been a little better. I would have liked if we'd found out her plans for the future. Is she with Finn? Is Finn with Rose? Is she going to start training other Jedis? What happens next? She just kind of visits Luke's old home, and that's it. And I can't complain too much about that because, you know, we didn't actually get any plans for Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi. He's just, they were at a party, smiling and looking at Force ghosts, and that was the end of the movie. I can't be too angry that we don't know what's going to happen in Rey's future, but, I guess the point is now she has a future. She's put all this darkness behind her, and she kind of adopts the Skywalker name as her own because Kylo, Luke, and Leia were the people she cared about more than anyone else. Okay, so Kylo Ben, played by Adam Driver. We're just going to call him that from now on. He finally gets his redemption. I wasn't sure, is he going to go down with the ship, go evil to the end, or will he be able to forgive himself for Han's murder? Will he be someone worthy of Rey in the end? And yes, he did have his redemption, and it wasn't really a case of needing to save anyone, although he does. Although she saves him and then he saves her, so it's kind of a back and forth between these two. They're connected in the Force, he explains. But it's not really a case of Ben needing to save Rey, but realizing that this path to power he's been on has cost him everything. The respect and love of his friends and family. His parents are now dead. The girl he likes has pretty much rejected him. And then to find out that from the start he's been manipulated by Palpatine, that these visions from Darth Vader were actually sent by Palpatine to turn him to the dark side. This is more akin to an alcoholic hitting rock bottom than anything else. He's not really even a villain in this movie. The first half of the movie is just him seeking Rey out. He's more of a hound dog hunting her down. Now the scene with Han and Kylo, Han and Ben, succeeds in a way where I felt like the scene with Luke and Rey failed, but I'll get onto that later. It's, to keep with the alcoholic metaphor, when he throws that lightsaber away, he's throwing the bottle away. He's just finally turning, the dark side has brought him nothing but pain, and he owns it now. He's willing to finally accept the bad things he's done and try and redeem himself from them. I'm kind of sorry he died at the end, because that's the end of the Skywalker bloodline, but by that notion, he did finally become his grandfather. He became Darth Vader. He was the Sith Lord ruling the galaxy, who dies saving someone he loves from the Emperor. And yes, I ship Reylo hard, so I had my squee moment when they kissed, and then my gut knife twist moment when he died. So it's like, but it was kind of the back and forth the characters had the whole movie. She poured her life into him to save him. He put it back into her to save her. And at the cost of his own life, he did the right thing and thus was redeemed. So, Finn by John Bogoya. He was in the movie. Moving on. Okay, so unfortunately, Finn did not have a lot to do. He was just kind of going along with everything. He had something to tell Rey, but we never learn what it is. I really do see him and Rose being a better match than him and Rey, but the implication is he was going to tell Rey he was in love with her. We never really find out. I would like, hey, I've got something to tell you. Rose and I are getting married. And it's like, oh, that's great. I've got a kind of on-again, off-again thing with my arch enemy, so I'm good. Okay, so there was no character development for Finn. I was hoping he could at least bond with and lead the cast-off stormtroopers, but that didn't really happen. He's just there doing things, and John was wasted in this one. But Finn's never been a really great character in the Star Wars mythos. Sorry. Poe by Oscar Isaac. He was a little testy in this one. He was very cranky the whole time. Being a leader made him whiny. And I wish they'd left him kind of sexually ambiguous. I know a lot of people thought he had feelings for Finn back in Force Awakens. They then give him this woman to flirt with in this movie, and I felt like, ugh, Disney. I know introducing one ex-girlfriend does not lock his sexuality into any one category, but it felt like an attempt to quash those rumors. I did appreciate the fact that he was struggling with leadership, and I think the scene with him and Lando was probably his best moment in the film. Speaking of which, Lando Calrissian was back. It was an absolute pleasure to see Billy D. Williams back as Lando. He was having so much fun with the part. It wasn't a huge role. He has like 2 or 3 scenes in the movie, but it's throughout the movie, so it's definitely a small part, not a cameo. I think with the passing of Carrie Fisher, Lando then becomes the obvious candidate to bring in as the classic character advising the new kids. And he has that kind of great line where he says, the reason we succeeded is we had each other, so don't do this on your own. It's not going to be Rey or Finn or Poe who wins this. It's going to be all of them together. Really, you could tell that he was having such a great time filming this. It was like Billy hadn't aged a day. Just a wonderful appearance, and I'm so glad we got to see Lando one more time. And then there's C-3PO, Anthony Daniels, who, after the last 2 films, finally had something to do besides follow Leia around. I know a lot of people had a problem with that "looking at my friends" line. It's like, oh, they've never been friends with C-3PO. Well, Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker take place a few years apart. There's a lot of time has passed. Let's not pick apart that one line too harshly. Anyway, 3PO was back providing much-needed comic relief for this movie and suffering indignity over his many, many humiliations. Oh. This was a fine final appearance by Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, if he chooses it to be. He's always in demand for the various Star Wars cartoons and spin-offs. But it's also a heroic moment for 3PO because he chooses to let them mind-wipe him in order to save the rebellion, to save the resistance. Generally speaking, this was a fine return to form for our favorite golden droid. And what about the rest of the classic cast? Well, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford all appeared. Let's break down the classic trilogy actors. It hurts me to say this, but I didn't think much of Mark Hamill's appearance. To find out that he and Leia knew this big secret about Rey and never shared it seems kind of like a, what? Why? Why not? How did you know? Why didn't you say something? It's very confusing that they would never tell her. And just generally speaking, the scene felt a little flat to me. I don't know. Mark definitely needed to be in this. I'm glad he was in it, but it's not my favorite Luke Skywalker moment. Last Jedi was a much better send-off for him. This one, yes, I expected him to come back as a Force ghost. I mean, he kind of just shows up and starts making fun of Last Jedi. Like, you should be more respectful with the lightsaber, you know. Oh, okay, thanks. And why is nobody ever shocked when a Force ghost shows up? It's like, oh, you're not dead. I'd be like, ah! Carrie Fisher's final appearance, I'm going to be honest, most of her scenes just did not work for me. Because it felt very obvious that they were writing around pre-existing dialogue. Like, here, I don't deserve this lightsaber. Oh, take the lightsaber with you. It's like, okay, that was an odd 10 minutes. They were hammering her square pegs into round holes. Yes, it fit, but it wasn't a great fit. I understand them wanting Carrie back for the final film, but it was mostly, you know, seeing her from behind, seeing a body double from behind, and then these odd bits of dialogue that just didn't feel like they were responding to what was actually happening. And the big Yoda moment in this film where, oh, that character just showed up. It's Han. Han was back. The one guy skeptical about the Force came back as a ghost. Oh, he wasn't really a ghost. He was Kylo's memory, Ben's memory, because he wasn't tinted blue, apparently. So that makes all the difference. It was great to see Harrison back one more time, and this was a really good moment for him and Adam Driver. Here, Han is trying to get his son to accept his bad deeds and own them, and he redeems his son in memory, if not in person. Both Rey and Kylo are in a lot of pain when they're confronted by the ghosts of their father figures. And whereas Luke is just kind of spouting platitudes, and it's undermined by that he kept this monumental secret from a person who needed to know it. Whereas with Ben and Han, it just feels like there's an emotional connection there. Han is making him understand that he's capable of changing his own destiny. Okay, Emperor Palpatine by Ian McDiarmid. I had expected the Emperor to come back as a Sith ghost, but he was alive, and I'm not crazy about that because of the effect it has on the original trilogy. With him alive, that means that Anakin, as Darth Vader, didn't kill him and didn't rid the galaxy of the Sith. I mean, Snoke and Kylo were Darksiders, but they weren't Sith. Now, the Sith are still alive. They're still there. So Anakin saved his son's life, but he didn't fulfill his destiny as the chosen one, and I'm a little touchy about that. We never get an answer for how he survived the second Death Star. You know, even if it was him cloning new bodies for himself, like they did in the Dark Empire comic books that Dark Horse put out, I would have been fine with that. He's hooked up to this massive life support machine, so I have to assume that it is his original body. Palpatine being alive works for Rey's narrative, but it very much feels like a cheap plot device to get to the story where they needed it to go. As for the rest of the movie, I liked the Knights of Ren. I could have used a little more explanation for them, but at least they finally showed up after 3 films. And they were just kind of like Kylo Ren's traveling Imperial Guard, so that's fine. Some great cameos in this movie. Wedge! Huh? Wonderful to see Dennis Lawson back in the cockpit, even if it was just for one moment. Saddest scene in the film, when you see Chewbacca break down after Leia dies. When that Wookiee just starts howling, I got choked up. I'm getting a little choked up now. I wish Rose had more of a part. She's barely in this film. Even if it was to establish whether or not she and Finn are together, we never find out. The romance game of the sequel trilogy is weak compared to the original or the prequel films. But then I don't feel like J.J. Abrams is a great director when it comes to like quiet moments, to character moments. He's more about the big explosions and the bigger storyline, and that works to a degree for Rise of Skywalker. But there were a lot of moments where I wanted them to explore more of the character of the supporting cast, and they didn't. Otherwise, great special effects works, especially in all the aliens. What was it? Slug character in the Millennium Falcon. The desert skiff chase was cool. I wish we'd had more good space fighting. I feel like the dogfighting got scaled back a lot to save a few minutes off the runtime, and this was not the best space fighting. That honor probably goes to Return of the Jedi or even Revenge of the Sith. The opening dogfighting scenes in Revenge of the Sith are amazing. So again, I liked Rise of Skywalker better than Force Awakens, not as much as Last Jedi. That said, everyone I saw it with had a good time. My friend's 11-year-old daughter was going nuts throughout the movie. So it's a Star Wars film. You're going to have a good time if you go see it. I mean, I had a good time even seeing Solo. On reflection, it was not a great movie, but, I don't think it's possible to have a really, really horrible time seeing a Star Wars film. Go see it. You'll enjoy it. This has been 2019, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this vlog review. I'll see you next time here on Comic Book Issues. Until then, I'm your host, Brian Heinz.